Good evening, everyone. I've got spit up on my shirt. It's not even from my baby. Ain't that some BS? BS with S.A.C. Last time on Bedtime Stories with Sean Arthur Cox, we had William at the Laughing Raven with Ollivander, and he had a plan to save the day somehow. All the people of the Laughing Raven were arming themselves, getting ready to go defend the tavern against the Duke of Pembroke, who was laying siege to the Laughing Raven. They're up to something, we don't know what, but when we last left off, William and Ollivander had just left the Laughing Raven to go negotiate a surrender, and they were followed by Sally, Sunshine, and Harry for backup. For those of you who don't remember, Sally, Sunshine, and Harry were mentioned at the beginning of the book and the middle as being Ollivander's wife and 7-year-old son. All right, and that's where we left off. Hey, Ollie, William said after a moment of silence to gather up his courage. Yeah, Will? I've got sort of a confession to make. What's that? Ollivander kept his eyes facing forward, his pace steady. I'm not really chosen. Ollivander stopped in his tracks and turned to William, head cocked to the side, one eyebrow raised. What? I'm not chosen. But you have the sword of McFinn. It's a fake. I checked. Not an ounce of power in it anywhere. So the real sword is still out there somewhere. No, I'm pretty sure this is the real sword. I just don't think it ever had any power. Yeah, that's not what I said. But the legends. Ollivander strained to keep up. Fake, sort of. McFinn was magic. He was a sorcerer or wizard or something. The point is the power was within him. It was always within him. The sword was just a ruse to keep people at a disadvantage. So you're saying, yeah, I had to find the magic on my own. You mean you've got the talent? That's fantastic news. No! William grabbed Ollivander's arm and looked him in the eye. I'm not magic. I'm not chosen. Not anything. But all that stuff with it. But you did all that stuff with it. With the kobolds, the flames, the blood, the invulnerability. Tricks. I strapped the bottomless bag across my chest so blows would disappear into it. Hid the endless wineskin in my sleeve so it looked like the sword was bleeding, and then I lit it on fire to make it look more intimidating. But the flaming arrows. Yeah, about that. William scuffled his feet in the dirt. I may have asked Harry to set arrows on fire and then shoot them from inside the twin bag anytime I shouted huzzah. Sorry. So all of it fake. A ruse to keep them from killing anyone in town. What about the kobold prophecy? Oh, that part's real. A kobold chosen one. Didn't know they had those. They always seem so stupid. Well, people would think you stupid too if someone invaded your lands and you defended with gardening tools, but they were farmers. It was all they had, so they get chased out. They have no home, so they wander the countryside, taking whatever crap job they can find, which usually ended up being underpaid minion work. They weren't cowardly, they just didn't feel like dying for some villain who reviled them and wouldn't even pay a living wage. I guess you learn something new every day. They stared at each other in silence for a moment. Then Ollivander hoisted the white flag back up and resumed the march toward the forces of Pembroke. As long as one of you is chosen, I'm sure it will work out fine. William grabbed the almost worthless sword and hurried to catch up. The Duke of Pembroke stood in the center of the field, waiting with a small contingent of soldiers. He wore clothes of velvet and silk in rich shades of purple and indigo. An ornate helmet and bronze breastplate with the Pembroke crest accentuated the purple. The purples and blues he wore nicely. The crest was a scorpion gilded with gold, staring out at William with jade eyes and a ruby drop of blood dripping from the stinger. A dark leather belt circled his waist, holding his elaborately crafted sword of gold and jewels. Around his neck hung the cloak of the autocracy, blue moonwool fur that hung almost to his ankles, and a layer of white for a top it that hung to his forearms. He had pulled back his flowing black hair into a ponytail, revealing his sharp, pointed chin and nose, his exaggerated cheekbones and beady eyes. Crooked teeth showed through his twisted grin. He looked like a cleaned-up version of Villius, which Ollivander would no doubt say proved his guilt. "Ah, Ollivander and company," he said, throwing his hands out wide as though greeting a cherished guest. "I see you've finally decided to do the reasonable thing and surrender." "Not quite," Ollivander said. "My friend William has something he would like to discuss with you." The Duke balked and waved his hand dismissively. "Such a kidder you are, Ollivander. I thought you came here to be sensible, not to bother me with the petty concerns of insignificant children." "On the contrary," Ollivander replied, "everyone I bring is quite significant." "Really?" the Duke scoffed. "These pitiful women and children playing dress-up at being soldiers?" "Playing? Not in the least." He gestured back towards Sally and Harry. "Those two are my artillery." He held his hand up in a fist and brought it down firmly. On cue, Harry and Sally bombarded the ground just before the armies of Pembroke with massive blasts. Fire and lightning scorched the earth and left in their wake deep craters and trembling soldiers. "Now that you see I'm taking these proceedings very seriously," he said, "you will understand I mean no jest when I tell you William is my special guest, and you would be wise to listen to what he has to say." "What is the meaning of this insolence?" the Duke barked. "You march out here under banner of truce and then assault my men?" "Not at all," Ollivander said, stepping forward to glare at the Duke of Pembroke. "None of your men have been harmed under banner of truce, which is more than I can say for the way you've treated my associate and ally Carlos over there in your stocks. He approached too under a white flag. No, I'm not the insolent one. I'm not the insolent one. Now I suggest you listen to the message my friend has for you." "Very well. I'll listen to your friend." The Duke rolled his eyes and let slip a quick laugh from the sneer he'd etched into his face. "What is your message, boy?" "You will start by addressing me as Sir." The Duke sneered and turned dismissively from William. "Very well. Be aware when this is all over that this could have ended another way." I'm sorry, that's the wrong person. "Very well. Be aware when this is all over that this could have ended another way, that your ignoble nature has brought this down upon you." Yes, I've been warned and I'm shaking." William adjusted his stance, attempting to appear more heroic, more menacing. "You will recall you sent your lackey to coerce Ollivander into obtaining the sword of McFin for you and your purposes. And how is this your affair, boy?" It is my affair, because I am McFin's heir. The sword is mine, and you shall not take it from me." The Duke laughed, loud enough for anyone near to detect the scorn and derision contained within. "You, McFin's heir, a pathetic little boy like this, claims right to the greatest blade in existence." "Yes," William said, holding the sword out for the Duke to see. The ignoble noble choked for a moment, eyes wide. "Please," he said, turning toward his men, arms raised, "it takes more than a shiny sword to convince me you are McFin's heir." "Then perhaps a demonstration." William whispered the command word for the greaves of speed and flicked the ring of invisibility over his finger. In a blink, William was gone, reappearing a second later a considerable ways down the line, holding the sword for the soldiers there to see. "Behold the sword of McFin!" He vanished again and appeared mere moments later at the other side of the encampment, displaying the blade to those near. "Behold the power it possesses!" Another moment later, and he stood in the midst of the army, waving the sword over their heads. "Kneel before the heir of McFin!" The Duke waved his sword toward his men menacingly. "Any dog one of you that kneels is dead by my hand." "I said kneel!" William's voice boomed, echoing from the treetops and mountains, rattling bones in its wake for miles. The ring of booming voice worked better than he had hoped. As he spoke, William slammed the blade into the earth, aided by the supernatural strength of the bracers and the sword's enchanted tip, which once had been a dagger. In an instant, it sank all the way to the hilt. He pounded the ground with his Earthmaster's gauntlet as he did, shaking the land violently as tremors raced through the soil and bedrock. Many soldiers lost their balance, and fell to their knees. Many who kept their feet fell to their knees anyway out of fear. The Duke held his ground, refusing to yield. In a blink, William was at his back, sword of McFin stretched around, pressed against his chest. "Do you need a more personal demonstration?" he asked. Or perhaps you think you can take me." "Rather boastful talk for a man attacking me from behind like a coward." William smirked, eyeing the bitter noble's rapier. He had more difficulty leading sheep along than the Duke of Pembroke. "Very well, Duke. I propose a challenge. You may take 3 strikes on me. In return, I will take but 1 against you. I shall even let you go first." The Duke sneered and pulled his rapier. "Fool! You shall never have the chance to take it, for I shall cut out your heart and have it served with my lunch." With the grace of a master fencer, the Duke spun on his heels and lunged hard at William's chest. The blade deflected ineffectively off his leather armor. William peered at the Duke from beneath his eyebrows, smiling. "That's 1. Try again, like you mean it." The Duke delivered another blow to William's chest, but had little more success than the first. "That's 2. You'd better make this one count." The Duke took several steps back for a running start. William did likewise, and when the Duke charged, William matched him, sprinting head-on toward the blade. The tip of the rapier managed to penetrate the armor on the 3rd blow and sank deep. William stood, grinning from the side of his mouth, and stepped forward, allowing every inch of the blade to disappear into his chest. Where there should have been blood, instead, a soft glow poured from the wound. "But how?" The Duke trembled visibly. "Really?" William called, waving his blade in the Duke's face. "Sword of McFin, have you not been paying attention, Duke?" William pulled the bloodless blade from his chest and handed it back to the shaking noble. No sooner did William let go than the Duke slashed repeatedly at his chest, again to no meaningful effect. "Why, Duke, you've taken 6 more swings. I suppose that means I get 3, now doesn't it?" William motioned to the soldiers looking on in fear. "And as he has no intentions of upholding his end of our agreement on his own, could someone please restrain him?" 2 soldiers stepped forward and took the Duke of Pembroke by the arms, holding him firmly in place. "1," William said, pulling the sword of McFlynn from his belt and dragging it slowly along the Duke's breastplate, severing it cleanly down the center with its ever-sharp point. "2," he said, slicing effortlessly through the chainmail the Duke wore beneath the breastplate. 3. William dragged the tip of the blade delicately from the Duke's neck to his nethers, cutting through the clothing and belt. His shirt draped open as his soiled trousers fell to the ground. William had been careful not to cut the man's skin, but for all the Duke's screaming, one would never have known. "Now, Duke, these fine and honorable men are going to release you. If you would like, we can continue our little game, but I believe by now you understand who the victor will be. Or, if you would prefer, we can behave as gentlemen, and I can deliver the message I've come to give you." That wasn't the message," the Duke stammered. "No," William said with calm authority, "that was not the message. That was because you insisted on shaming yourself by behaving in so ungentlemanly a manner toward not only the heir of McFin, but anyone common or noble." "Very well," said the Duke, weeping a little. "What is your message?" "Oh, no, you misunderstand. It is not my message at all," William corrected as he pulled the mirror from his belt and held it out for the Duke to see. The ignoble noble looked on and saw a beautiful room with many a tapestry and painting on its walls. Red carpeting with gold trim ran from the door to the opposite side of the room, which showed a throne, upon which sat a kobold in a rather stately jacket, deep blue and double-breasted. Gold buttons and embroidery accented its seams, and tasseled epaulets lined the shoulders. "But," the Duke cried, voice filled with furious anger, "that's my throne room! Who is this monster that sits in my throne?" "Greetings, sir," boomed a voice loud enough for all to hear, amplified by the magic ring worn on the hand that held the mirror. "I am Wilfred, King of the Kobolds and Duke of Pembroke. Because of your actions in the past, your movements against His High Excellency, Sir Baron Ollivander Barlow Smythe, Esquire, 1st Earl of Oxbridge, Lord of Caldlow Manor, Keeper of the King's Land, Slayer of Dragons, Defeater of Helmut the Butcher, Conqueror of the Shadowlands, Liberator of Cities, Fiend of the Meek, Friend of the Meek, and anointed High Protector of the 12 Realms, and your conduct today unbecoming of both a noble and a gentleman, you are being stripped of all titles and lands. With no heir, control of the lands defaults to its previous owners, the kobolds. As there were no guards or soldiers present at your castle, we have taken up residence without resistance, and expect similar ease as we transition power over the land to its rightful inhabitants, who welcome with peace those humans, elves, dwarves, or indeed any races who may wish to live within our borders. We offer an olive branch of amnesty to any of your soldiers who wish to help defend these lands and call them home. Marcus Bloodstone of Freeport and his captain of the guard, Bloody John, have agreed to take any men in excess of our needs and offer them the same general amnesty. We hope you will accept this offer of mutual peace and prosperity and help us to form a new kingdom in which all who come with an eye to helping others can thrive and prosper, free of the corruption and tyranny that has too long oppressed the 6th Realm under the hands of the former Duke of Pembroke and the villain Villius Bloodstone. Those of you who accept should report back within the month. This should grant you time enough to consider the decision carefully and make your way home. If you decide to decline the offer, no grudges will be held, nor will any charges of desertion be levied. Keep your arms as severance pay, but please move from our lands within the month. Should you feel the need to resist with force, however, allow me to point out that you are currently surrounded by my soldiers, and must also contend with McFinn's heir, Ollivander the Great, and the entirety of his sizable arsenal of magic arms and armors. Ollivander held the flag aloft and waved it 3 times in the air. From the land surrounding rose a great kobold war cry, a combination of jeers, howls, and the clanging of weapons. The choice is yours. William placed the mirror back in his belt and walked away, not bothering to look back. Ollivander followed. Some soldiers looked as though they might hold their ground, but as the bulk of the army dispersed without so much as a pulled dagger or a raised fist, they quickly lost their nerve, not willing to face the kobold army in bands of 5 or 10. "What about me?" the Duke shouted after William. "What happens to me?" "You heard your options," William called back and opened the door for Ollivander, Sally, and Harry. He turned and gave the Duke a salute before shutting the door behind him. Well, isn't that just like William? Cunning plans, using magical items to make it look like he has a lot more power than he really does. That's the end of that chapter. Tomorrow we will read the epilogue, and then we'll be all done with new tricks. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I hope you enjoy the ending. Until next time, have good dreams and good night.